We keep talking about how the digital economy is fueled by data, how data is the new oil. So welcome to the reality. Data is important. Data is the building block of digital economy. And when something is as important as being the foundation, building block of the economy, of course, there will be a need to protect it. There will be a need to ensure that it's used well, right? So everything that you said is, but of course, I mean, that's the new norm. So welcome to the new norm. Welcome to the digital world. It's going to be very different from the physical world that we lived in, right? We are going to see new regulatory frameworks, not just in India, but across the world. Data is not just going to be about IT. Data is going to define trade. So companies or countries rather will have to figure it out what their data strategies are. Now, that said, innovation is equally important, right? And in order for you to fuel innovation, free trade of global trade of data is going to be very important. At the same time, you will need to have certain data in country which is important for security, which is important for both national as well as citizen security, right? So I think as this whole digital world becomes very real and we start waking up to what it really means, I think we have to first of all stop generalizing data and everything that we keep generalizing, right? There is no one data. When we look at data, you have to first start look at the classification of data. There will be some data which can cause bias, which can cause, create risks in terms of, and risk to the extent it can create national risks, risk to national security. And it is important for a country to ensure that this data gets protected. And to protect it, whether it's stored here or stored in the safest place, it needs to be stored in the safest place possible, right? Then there is data which is sort of sensitive data, which you want to, which can like financial data, etc., which you want to ensure that you absolutely are able to use to innovate, to provide services to the consumers, but at the same time security is important, right? So you have to look at ways how can you use this data and at the same time keep your or protect your own security as a citizen. And there will be regulatory frameworks to ensure that you're able to protect your security while you're able to use this data to get the conveniences needed. And then there is data which can be easily used for research, for trade, for innovation, where I don't think government should even have a role to play. Right? So the first thing is you have to understand how data needs to get classified and what are the different categories of data. And then the regulatory framework that needs to come into play for each category of data, and it will be different, right? Businesses have to adapt. Businesses have to understand where do they operate. If they operate in super sensitive data that has implications for national security, of course it will be stringent and they will have to ensure that they have the guardrails in place and the checks and balances in place to ensure that data is not compromised at all. Right? If the business is working in sensitive data where security is important and it's more of citizen personal security, building that into your basic design principle of the business is the way ahead. It's the new norm. You can't treat it as something that I'll think about later. You have to think of it as something that I will consider as I build out my business, as I design my business, because it's going to be fundamentally important. And this is where a concept-based approach, etc., becomes extremely important, right? So businesses have to start taking security seriously. Right? I think the focus needs to be on security and nothing else. Everything else is a means to an end, and we often lose the plot because we focus on the tactics rather than the end goal. So as long as the focus is on security, it's extremely important. I don't think a business can compromise on that, and a business wouldn't want to compromise on that. early stage funding. I mean, first of all, we took an hour to present the startup report, and there was like 99% positive. So I'm glad we only picked the one thing that was not even a negative, but a question. So maybe it might be worth focusing a bit on the positives, right? The fact that the Indian startup ecosystem is growing at 12 to 13% is tremendously, it's a very, very positive sign. The fact that we are now officially the third largest startup base, the fact that our advanced tech startup is growing 50% annually, is tremendously positive. The fact that women in entrepreneurs is rising, have nearly doubled year over year, is tremendously positive. Right? Now, when it comes to funding, overall funding is growing and it's very healthy. The pipeline is very healthy. Where we are seeing a decline is the early seed stage, right? The seed stage funding. That has been declining for the last 2 years. And I think that's normal. It happens everywhere in the evolution of startup life cycle. It happens everywhere. Investors will move more and more towards consolidation and focusing on mature companies and going deeper. It works that way. What usually happens in these cases when you have a evolved startup ecosystem like our ecosystem right now, there's a need for maybe government but some sort of a structured institution that will look at just seed stage. And it's not about funding alone. Funding is one small piece of it. It's about mentoring. It's about building the capabilities and the capacity. So it needs a bit of a structured approach. So I think it's a good signal to us that India has to now move fast and set up that structured approach to ensure that the pipeline doesn't dry up and there's enough early stage startups, because that's where a lot of innovation happens. So it's going to be extremely important. And it's an and story. It's not either or. I think, whether you go for an IPO or not is a business reason, and there has to be a need for that. Until there's a need, I don't see why a startup should unnecessarily focus on just getting an IPO. It doesn't even make sense, right? So there has to be a need for that. So again, we are at that stage in the ecosystem where there are a lot of alternative funding methods available to our startups, and it gives them the freedom to grow, it gives them the freedom to innovate, it gives them the freedom to experiment. I'm not worried about that right now. You have to stop applying the old lens to today's ecosystem. Technology is changing our world, and it's time we internalize that, time we accepted that. If you keep applying the old lens to looking at success or failure in today's world, you will only see failure. Okay? In today's world, what you have to look at is, the first thing I look at is what's going to be critical. If AI is the new electricity for the world, what are some of the areas within AI that's going to be absolutely critical? And what is critical for India? Data analytics, cybersecurity. These are absolutely important. As I said in the room, AR, augmented reality, virtual reality, huge potential for India, right? Even blockchain has tremendous potential beyond fintech. In fintech, of course, but beyond fintech, in agriculture, in enterprise. The fact that we are seeing a very positive and healthy growth in each of these segments in India, we are seeing new ecosystems emerge in each of these ecosystems, tells you we are on the right path. So I absolutely, I cannot apply the old lens to what's happening now because it'll make no sense. Talent is important, building the talent capability for the new technologies and the jobs that will get created as a result of the new technologies is absolutely important. That's job one for NASSCOM. So we have the NASSCOM Future Skill Initiative, which has a very bold goal to train over 2 million people in the next 4 to 5 years, or reskill them, IT workforce. So that's job one for us. It's very important.